Hey guys, this is Katie. My husband and I work on the farm, and our two young boys love helping out when they can. I'm usually the one that you'll talk to if you're interested in purchasing our beef or pork, so don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions if you're interested. For whatever reason, I am a prove-it person. It doesn't matter how small or simple the idea, I refuse to accept someone's opinion or fact the first time I hear it, especially if they can present a well-informed defense. The irony is that I can't come up with a well-thought-out argument to defend any of my beliefs or facts. My husband often laughs because my response is the same as our 11-year-old niece when asked why I believe something. I just stop talking. It doesn't matter what they have to say, I just agree to disagree. The problem is when I approached reading the Bible this way. I would hear stories about how the Bible had changed someone's perspective or helped them have an epiphany about life. I would read the Bible, maybe even the same verse, and nothing would happen. I was not any more convinced than before I read. I was still confused and frustrated because this ancient book hadn't brought life into my world. It hadn't lived up to the hype that everyone claimed. Then, out of frustration, and possibly to prove my own point, I wouldn't pick up the Bible for another month or two. This inconsistent use of the Bible to fit my needs when I wanted was obviously not an effective strategy for enlightenment or building my relationship with God. I had to do two things in order to change this pattern. I had to choose, in faith, to discipline myself, not because I knew what the outcome would be, but because I knew that what God had on the other side was better than what I had. Hebrews 11:1. I had to make a commitment to read every day, not when I was in a desperate mess that I'd created, not when circumstances seemed to overwhelm me, not to prove a point, but just to have the discipline to read. And secondly, I had to trust. Commitment with a plan, 2 Timothy 2:15. The Bible can be an overwhelming book. With its over 2,000 pages in some editions, there are sections that can be boring, some sections are dark and heavy, and other parts are just confusing. Where was I supposed to start? What did I need to know the most? What was the most important thing I needed to know? Is it okay to read it out of order? Just like any big task in life, I had to just sit down and decide what my goal was and then break that goal down into manageable pieces that I thought I could commit to daily. And then I had to make an allotted time in my day for reading. I didn't have to know all things or have all the answers. I just had to be faithful to my commitment. Like many new habits, the first week was pretty good, but then I started to waver. This is when I would go back to my original plan and remind myself of my commitment. Trust God. Proverbs 3:5. The second and harder thing I had to do was trust. I had to trust that every word printed in the Bible was truth. Matthew 24:35. And had relevance in my life today. I had to stop trying to find the faults and inconsistencies and start trying to make sense of them when they occurred. I may not, and probably won't, have a revelation every day, but I just trusted that each word had purpose. Then I could begin to open my heart and mind to let the truth enter into me so that I can begin to work something new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Like any relationship, we'll get out of it what we put into it. We know that Christ is committed to us, 1 John 4:19, but are we committed to him? For me, this had been one of the most transformative acts I've done to commit myself to Christ, the man, the older brother, Romans 8:29. There were many steps before this that were necessary, but reading my Bible daily has allowed me to know God's person and to reveal his character. I had experienced various pieces of the Bible, But by going straight to the source daily, I began to anticipate what he would do next, how he would react, and maybe, just maybe, start to understand some of the why. Just like earthly relationships, it is said that you think you know someone until you live with them. You've seen them in various situations, and you know what it is like to have experiences with them. But until you commit to an intimate and vulnerable shared life and trust them, you can't start to understand and know their person, their motivations, and their why in life. In this type of committed relationship, you can also give part of yourself so that a bond develops based on interaction, growth, and maturity. The difference with God is that He will never fail and He will never lie. There are definitely parts of the Bible that still confuse me, but that has just added to the intrigue and given me motivation to keep reading. If I trust Him, I know that when I need to understand the confusing parts, I will. If I don't ever understand it, then I don't need it. I don't have to spend my energy making the Bible truthful. It already is. There are times that life will still be confusing and overwhelming. In these moments, I don't forget my commitment. I continue to read, and I cling to the foundations and truths that I know to be true and wait. Psalm 37:7. Until I come up for breath again with new enlightenment. I don't have to fight and struggle. I just know that I live in a broken and sinful world, Romans 5:12, and life will feel like this from time to time. Hold on, it gets better. 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. So my truths. A loving Father. If you've been a Christian for a while, you probably have a few scriptures that you hang on to all the time to encourage you, lift you up, or remind you of God's greatness. If so, awesome. Hang on to those. They will be your anchor when nothing else in life makes sense. If you are young or a new Christian, you may not have developed these truths. If not, use mine until you find the ones that ground you. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. 1 John 4:8. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. 1 John 4:18. And there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, and He will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. 1 Corinthians 10:13. I know that God is love, and He wants to take care of me. He wants to love me and comfort me. The world is inconsistent and confusing, but He's always the same loving Father. If you need help creating a plan or figuring out where to start reading the Bible, let us know. We'd be happy to walk you through the process.
Thanks, Kate. Hearing your blog caused me to think of one thing. When you get mail, what mail do you always open?
The ones that I need to take action with.
Ones you need to take action
right,
with.
the ones that are relevant or important, I guess.
Bills.
Right.
Maybe bills, cookbooks, not so
I don't
much.
get cookbooks.
Oh, you don't get cookbooks.
Sorry, I'm not like Sarah, Nana.
Okay. So maybe cards from people
Yes.
or that you know or things like that, and you go through and open, you don't lay them to the side. Advertisement, nah.
Right.
Nah, I'm that way. I don't read advertisements. What would constrain us? Because you laid down a perfect plan for the fact of saying you really need to read and study. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, you're ignorant. Mm-hmm. You're like a newborn baby, as Paul said, desiring the sincere milk of the word, but not much of it.
Right.
So how would we get to view the Bible as an important thing? Not a bill necessarily. I don't want my Bible to a bill. But from a friend, or like at Christmas, getting Christmas cards.
I don't know, and I know everyone won't have the same experience, but for me, it kind of started with, like, teaching Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because, like, I had to, when you teach something, you have to make it understandable and you have to ingest it before you can do output. But that helped me a lot. And it just at first it just started, like I said, with the random stories, from Sunday school. But then I started wanting to, like, fill in the blanks and, like, either what happened to the people in between, like what got them to that point in life. I think even, like, so at one point I just started in Genesis and I went through. It helped me to see he's there. There's chaos and there's, chaos, confusion, sadness because of the choices we've made. But he's not the father of, I gotcha. He's going to be there and he's going to be just if there's sin, thus the suffering. But he doesn't want to do it. He just does it if we need it.
Yeah.
He wants to love. He wants to take care of us. He wants to guide us. He wants to be with us in our victories. I don't know. And it's just when we choose not to trust him, for me, when we choose not to trust him, when we choose not to, what's the word, not bind, bind together with them, then that's when our suffering occurs.
Sometimes I find it that if I get a view of the Bible, especially if I go Old Testament or more Old Testament than New, then I get this picture of these people who had these episodes with God. Mm-hmm. David killing Goliath, David dealing with Saul, Samson, all of these people, Samuel, Saul, all these people have episodes. Mm-hmm. But when I get to the New Testament, I'm like, he went around with his disciples ministering all the time, finding people who came to him who wanted that. And I find a much more daily involvement with this Christ than I find with maybe the Old Testament characters. Because I don't know what they did in the meantime.
Yeah.
Because, one thing, too, is, to me, is what I'm trying to strive for is not, as you say, here is an obstacle. Oh, no, I run to Christ. It's, Christ is not my firefighter. He's not my insurance guy. And not my doctor. It's not like, oh, I got a problem. I got to see you now. But I don't see you unless I have a problem. But I want to see him as a kind of person that I can wake up with and kind of say, hey, Lord, today I'm facing things. I just really want to talk to you about it. Or, how's your day, Lord? Very seldom do we say, God, how are you? It's like, God, I'm not good. How are you? If I could do that, then I think it would, more than anything else, give me such a different view of Christ as my friend. As you said, he's not out to do a sin. He could do that without anything. But he's there to love us. But it's seemingly as much on our part as communicating with him rather than him communicating with us.
Yeah, because he's there. I mean, Samuel and Lee just had the verse where he's standing at the door. We have to just go answer the door. I'm not very good at quoting scriptures. But yeah, well, and I think there was something about, because I did it every day, not just an emergency. One, there was a familiarity. Like, I was comfortable and I wasn't afraid and I wasn't like, oh, I'm in trouble, help me out. Like going to the principal's office. It wasn't like that anymore. It was like, okay, you know me, I know you. Okay, this is what I've done, which you already know, but navigate it. Or I've done this, but I can't take that next step. Can you help me? Can you help me? Like, even if I knew what to do, I just didn't want to or was afraid to. Help me do this next step, walk through this next step. I don't know.
I think especially in the New Testament where Paul wrote most of the letters, most of the books, when he wrote to the Thessalonians, he wasn't writing to a church. He was writing to people in a church. He was writing to those people, and he would talk to them in such a way that was like, I'm going to come to you, and I'm really desiring to see you, and I hope to come to you. And how's this person, and how's that person? And like a real letter. Sometimes, if we could, when we read it, say, hey, I'm like the Corinthians. He's talking to me. The Lord is, not just Paul. The Lord talked through Paul. It's a living expression. But if I could do that to break the barrier of somehow he's God, but he's not human. And you know what I mean? He's the Lord. When do you talk to God? As little as possible. When you go talk to the king, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah.
But if my friend is here this morning and he wrote me a letter and I'm going to read it, I think that, I know for me, if I do that, remember to do it. And like you said, the key to what you said is that commitment to consistency is so vital in our lives, because otherwise we don't know. And our ignorance doesn't provide any assurance for us. So good job, Kate. I think that's really good. I think that one thing that you said is such a testimony, that you got to make yourself sit down and do it no matter what your previous beliefs are. It's like, if we don't overcome them, they will overcome us.
Yeah. Well, and it's an overwhelming book just by the nature of its size. It's like, well, I couldn't ever read all of it. Well, have you read any of it?
Yeah.
Like, just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, too, and I don't know if this is relevant or not, but a book that really helped me was, and I've been talking to you about it, but Corrie ten Boom's The Hiding Place.
Yes.
And then she has My Father's House, I believe. I had never heard someone talk about Christ so much in their daily life as she does. Like, well, I mean, she talks about it. She was like, he was just another member of our family. And she said, my dad would go from talking to us to talking to Christ. And then he'd go from talking to us, and he would stop and talk to Christ. And everybody in the house, my mom, everybody knew he was with us, among us, every day. And that was great. It was a really neat testimony, but it was really neat.
That's great.
But,
awesome. Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
We'll
Thank you.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for Around the Supper Table. At Sanctuary Family Farms, we want to be real. Whether that's through our blogs, daily verses, or even Nana's recipes, we want to share the messages that God has laid on each of our hearts. If you liked what you heard today or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Sanctuary Family Farms, or our website at www.sanctuaryfamilyfarms.com, where we share our recipes and blogs and sell farm fresh beef and pork. We can't wait for you to join us again for next week's episode.